Ladies and gentlemen, here at the 109th NAACP convention, and honored to have with us the Castro brothers. I think I have it right. This is Joaquin.
Joaquin, the congressman.
And this is Julian.
Got it, Julian.
All right. I was trying to remember from the neckties. That's how I can tell you. These guys are absolutely identical. And I want to start this way because both of them in Congress, Julian formerly in Congress, Joaquin while he was in Congress,
he was Secretary of HUD.
Yeah, but he was in. You weren't never in Congress. I'm sorry, you and May. That's right. But we know that you
I'm in Congress.
has gotten 100% grade A average. Right. Also here, the head of the Washington Bureau of the NAACP. Joaquin's been a loyal supporter of the NAACP, hasn't he?
Well, absolutely. As you know, the NAACP has graded the Congress since 1914 on those that support our bread and butter civil rights agenda. And let me just say, Congressman Castro has been extraordinary. He's voted with us every single time. He's been on the floor having a good fight for us on so many important issues, from financial services issues to equal opportunity issues and beyond. We're delighted to have him as a friend. He helps move the NAACP's agenda, not just voting the right vote, which he does, but also working and fighting the good fight for us on the floor. And let me just say, that is not easy on Capitol Hill, so we're grateful for such a great friend.
Not easy. You said you've been grading him since 1914?
No, not quite. The NAACP's graded the Congress, but we have been grading him since he came to the Congress. And let me say, we've watched his vote carefully. We've looked at the entire Texas delegation, and let me just say, there's an extraordinary side of that delegation that he clearly represents, and then there's a problem. We can talk more about that as well.
What's going to happen with the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau?
Well, we need to protect it. You know, we've tried to fight off attempts to weaken it, and the CFPB basically protects especially the most vulnerable among us. So we need to make sure that we protect it and we keep it in place.
Yeah. We know Trump wants to pretty much gut it, doesn't he?
No, that's right. President Trump and others are coming after it as a favor to these huge corporations. But, you know, that bureau has saved consumers and Americans millions and millions of dollars since its creation.
Mm-hmm. Something else that you've called for in the past few days is a special master to oversee the reunification of children with parents. Where is that right now?
Well, you know, I called for a special master because the Trump administration started separating these young immigrant children from their parents at the border, and about 3,000 of them were separated. And they did that with no plan to track the kids or the parents, no plan to reunite them. So there's still a lot that have to be reunited. So I'm saying the judge should appoint a special master, because I don't trust this government or this administration to be able to do the job of reuniting the families.
No, I firmly agree. Listen, the reckless way they separated these families, not keeping track of parents and children, but now they're going to have to find some way to get them back together. So I strongly agree with the congressman. We're having that fight on Capitol Hill as well. It needs to be made clear. It is uncertain they ever intended to reunite these families. It is uncertain.
Julian Castro, you visited a detention center or two, and you weren't denied entry. I think you even were taking the children some toys or something. Did they not let that happen either?
Yeah, it was down in McAllen on Father's Day. I was there with a group of activists from around the country, and we were trying to deliver some toys and letters of support to the young people at what's known as the Ursula Processing Center, which basically is the first point that these families go to, and they're separated there. So you can imagine how traumatic it is for these children and the parents. Needless to say, you know, I agree with both Joaquin and with Hillary that incompetence is the standard operating procedure of this administration, and we simply can't leave it in their hands to make sure that they reunite these families well. We need a special master. We need strong accountability like there hasn't been before.
You said incompetence, though. I thought, didn't he really represent us well over in NATO and just shore up our friendships and alliances? You don't think he did a great job doing that?
You know, I think all of us are just, holding our breath and waiting for him to leave Europe, because I think but the bad news is he's got to come back to the United States. So.
How do you feel about him meeting with Putin?
It's disappointing. Just a couple of days ago, 12 more indictments were brought against Russian agents that hacked into our election. And, you know, the fact is that could have made a difference. It was such a close election that I believe it could have made a difference in that election. And for him to go reward Vladimir Putin with a personal one-on-one meeting, he doesn't want anybody else in the room. He just wants to meet privately with Vladimir Putin. That's got to raise everybody's eyebrows. And I wish that he would focus on strengthening our alliances instead of tearing them down, and putting our foes on notice instead of treating them like our friends.
Isn't he really, Congressman Castro, doing Putin's bidding by doing that, tearing up these alliances?
Oh yeah, I mean, look, Vladimir Putin couldn't be happier with the way Trump is conducting business. And on the elections, the Russians targeted the African American community.
That's right.
They were trying to pour acid on every wound of American politics, and really trying to basically promote prejudice and get people to act on those prejudices, and wanting Americans to be divided and vote along racial lines, rather than allowing people to be united in this country.
Well, and then he talked about immigration, while he was overseas, and, how Europe was being besieged by this certain type of immigrant. The same rhetoric he talks here, and I mean, that just continues to divide people.
Yeah, I mean, you remember when he kicked off his campaign a few years ago, he talked about Mexican immigrants being rapists and criminals.
Right.
And every time he gets in a pinch, he goes back to a few of the same things, and one of them is beating up on immigrants, talking about building a wall, and now he's saying the same thing over in Europe.
We all right with the blue wave? You think we can win the House back?
Yeah, I think we are. I think we're going to win back the House of Representatives. We can't take anything for granted. Everybody's got to work hard, get everybody out that we know to vote. But I think it's looking strong for us.
We're very happy that the theme of this conference this year is defeat hate, vote.
That's right.
The number one thing that folks can do is to get out there and vote, make their voice heard.
No, that's absolutely critical. Can I ask you to comment on Beto? Can he beat Ted Cruz?
Oh yeah, Beto's running a strong campaign. I just came from an event with him, and he's got a fighting chance. I think he can do it.
Good. I hope so. And I'm so honored to, Brother Joaquin, that you've chosen my show to announce your candidacy for the presidency.
Julian.
Thank you. I'm sorry, Julian. I'm sorry.
But you can ask him.
I'm sorry, I meant Julian. I'm getting confused. But I was looking. I know that when the Kennedy brothers were in the White House, they say you can do that more. But can brothers be running mates?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. He wouldn't even have me as a roommate when we were in college or law school.
You wouldn't even run with your brother?
I would not.
No, I'm sorry, Julian. So when are you going to make the formal announcement?
Yeah, so I'll make a decision right after the November election, and then, if I decide to, we'll make an announcement, not too long after that.
And why not? I mean, we need a vast array of diverse candidates to deal with a lot. I mean, we can have a big field, and everybody's good.
Sure.
Everybody who's talking about it, I mean, to me, is a no-lose situation. And you ought to just jump in there no matter what happens and have this debate.
I think you're right. Look, you don't want 50 people standing on stage, but if you've got 15 or a little bit more than that, let everybody get up there and make their case to the American people.
So
and
you're
let
encouraging him to run?
I'd love for him to run. Yeah, I mean, let the strongest person win, because it's going to take the strongest person to beat Donald Trump in 2020.
Lastly, how much you know about Senate procedure? Can't the Democrats just break the quorum? Should they do that?
Yeah, look, I think that they should do everything that they can to keep this president, while he's under FBI investigation, from appointing a Supreme Court justice.
Well, and a nominee that has opined in a way that suggests that if an issue comes up to him with regard to an indictment of a sitting president, that he wouldn't go along with that. This is like an insurance policy for Donald Trump. It's selfish, and then you get to his politics and how he's ruled, which are terrible. So I hope that folks in the Senate are going to fight tooth and nail to make sure that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
If I can add to that, and I strongly agree. Procedurally, everything you're saying is on target, and NAACP strongly agrees with you on that. But we dealt with Kavanaugh 12 years ago when he was nominated to serve on the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals, and you couldn't be more correct. In addition to the process and the strategy of making a decision along these lines, and he shouldn't. We're in full agreement. Trump should not be able to make this decision. But the man's track record, I'm speaking of Mr. Kavanaugh's track record, is awful. This is someone that has fought against some of the basic premises and principles of civil rights protection in the country, and by no means should he serve on the Supreme Court. We didn't want him on the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals 12 years ago, and sadly, we proved ourselves to be right. So we're with you. We're working with the U.S. Senate. If we can convince these two Texas senators, and that's a whole different story, to be able to come on board and support this, maybe if they're not going to run for president, Mark, they should run for the Senate.
Yeah, hey, there it is. Kavanaugh has said that the Second Amendment guarantees the right to semi-automatic weapons. And even Scalia, you know, who wasn't a friend, said, you know, he wasn't too sure that automatic weapons shouldn't be regulated. So if Scalia can say that,
That's truly disturbing.
and if, you know, and for Kavanaugh to come and go a step further, that's a little scary.
Just completely out of step with where we are as a country. When we think about all of the incidents, it seems like it's happening every 3 or 4 days now, some sort of mass shooting. And the Heller decision, even as bad as that decision was, as you said, and a couple of other cases after that, have made clear that localities and states can regulate things like assault weapons. And so for him to go in the opposite direction is just completely out of step with precedent and also with where we are as a country.
Conveniently states' rights.
Yeah.
In essence, look, we know the damage those things have done in our communities, the Latino community, the African American community, and so many other racial and ethnic minority communities, as well as the poor. The number one cause of death of African American males between 15 and 19 is gun violence. African American children are only 12% of the national population, but 40% of the children victims of gun violence that result in death. We have to have a serious conversation about equal protection under law at the Supreme Court level, but sadly, again, Mr. Kavanaugh is not the one that needs to have that conversation.
Hillary Shelton of the Washington Bureau, the Castro brothers. I'm sorry I got you all confused for a minute there, but if you all watching on the video, you see it's easy to do. I like you. Y'all are cool. Y'all a pretty good little tag team.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, this man could campaign for you.
Yeah,
Actually,
I hope.
Well, if he
Yeah.
runs, I'm going to grow a beard because I don't want
Yeah,
anybody
yeah.
to say that I'm impersonating him. So I will grow a beard.
no, but I mean,
He's
he
gonna
could.
need Secret Service protection. too.
But I mean, you could introduce him. I mean, y'all could really tag team.
Oh,
Y'all a nice
if he
team.
runs, I'll be completely with him and helpful and everything.
Well, thank you for welcoming us all to Texas and to San Antonio in particular. And keep up the great work. Keep us posted about what you're doing. Joaquin and Julian Castro, you going back to D.C.?
I'm going back
important
tomorrow
work.
morning.
Important work to be done. So, folks, continue to check these gentlemen out, and there'll be a lot of other great news. Thank you for being here. Okay,
Thanks a lot.
folks. We're here at the NAACP 109th Annual Convention.